The Dark Knight, the Caped Crusader. Over the course of the last 75 years, we have seen our beloved character rise from the ranks, starting out as a lonely character seen on the sides of magazine stands, and rise through the ranks to not only become one of the most famous characters in the history of comic books, but one of the most recognizable and iconic figures in the course of modern fiction. But through all of that time, Batman has been exposed to a share of overly zealous fanboys, bad writers, and that grand tool of destruction that is the internet. And through the exposure to all of those things, we've slowly seen our character drop slowly from beloved comic book icon to what is in the minds of many people the comic book equivalent of the Chuck Norris joke. The feats, personality, and just grand ridiculousness of what this character has done and is capable of doing have been exaggerated throughout the years. But how do we ever know how much of that is real? How do we ever know, beyond the cape and the cowl, how much of what makes up this character is logic, how much is lore, and how much is simply because Batman?
Yes, this is real music. Darkness. No parents. Continue darkness. More darkness. Get it? The opposite of light. Super rich. Kinda makes it better.
So as one would guess, based on the premise and name of this show, it is very difficult to nail down exactly what it is that Batman is able to accomplish, and how much of whatever he is actually him. And one of the biggest reasons for this is because, just like any other comic book character, there are so many different Batmans. I mean, even if we take away the entirety of the comic books, we're still left with a large handful of various different actors in variously different kinds of roles who've all played the Caped Crusader. So I guess kind of a fun question to ask off the bat would be, who's the best Batman? Now, very specifically what I'm talking about here is not necessarily which Batman would win in the fight, or anything like that. What we're strictly talking about is in the terms of actually what it means to be the Batman. So why don't we go and take a look at that for a second. Let's start out, for beginners, with Tim Burton's 1989 Michael Keaton Batman. Now, Michael Keaton played Batman in two different roles, Batman and Batman Returns. And I'm going to immediately eliminate off the bat all the criticisms people are going to have about the fact that the costume they used at the time did not allow him to really bend his neck. Because, for one, that's kind of a period of the times and unfortunately something they couldn't get around. But surprisingly, despite that, the fight choreography in this movie is actually not that bad, and they're actually shown throughout both movies that he is actually very versatile in combat. So we're able to extrapolate from that this is a very versatile Bruce Wayne who's traveled the world, who's obviously trained over several different kinds of people in order to learn several different kinds of martial arts and different kinds of intelligence in order to carry out this character. Now, that's not to say that Michael Keaton doesn't have his negatives. Right off the bat, I think it's very obvious that you can see that Michael Keaton isn't quite the biggest fan of Batman's usual no-kill rule. In fact, it's actually one of the biggest sins that people often put against Tim Burton when it comes to his very old, very classic, but unfortunately doesn't quite age as well as I would like to version of Batman from the late 80s. Despite the no-kill rule, if there's one thing that I can definitely put in Keaton's favor, it's his gadgets. Although we're not able to see a lot of these gadgets at their full, high-speed potential, it is nice to see a lot of these gadgets get, used frequently, like the grappling hook or, his various batarangs or all that kind of stuff. They actually get a sense of the utility belt going through his character and all the different things he's able to accomplish. On top of that, it's nice seeing Batman from the universe that implies that Batman is more of a force, more of an idea than he is a character. You frequently have characters all across the movie that have no idea whether or not Batman is actually fact or fiction. So overall, I would say that Michael Keaton is kind of a mixed bag when it comes to things. Although his fighting prowess, his use of gadgets, and his ability to strike fear into his opponents being major components, giving points towards Michael Keaton, his disobeying of the no-kill rule is definitely a big strike against him. So next we move on to Batman Forever, played by Val Kilmer. Now, Val Kilmer, like the person we're about to talk to next, is one of the very few people that only got to play Batman once. And that's one of the things that makes it difficult to evaluate this role. That being said, Val Kilmer does actually have a couple things that are very much in his favor. Having Riddler being in this movie definitely gives us a sense to actually see on screen Batman being intelligent, actually trying to figure things out for himself. On top of that, we're actually able to see a lot of not only the no-kill rule being enforced by Batman in this role, but we're actually able to see his very iconic speech with Robin that actually extrapolates on that point and shows a deeper side of Batman that we get to see in many different versions. That being said, though, there are definitely some areas where Val Kilmer's Batman really falls apart. In particular, the fear angle being one of them, where compared to the other actors, I just never get this feeling that Val Kilmer is in particularly able to look intimidating in the Batman costume, even when he's in full motion in larger action sequences. Especially when you get to the major smile scene that's become meme famous over the last couple of years. On top of that, one of the major points definitely against him has to be how much damage is done while he's on post. I mean, I have nothing against the character in particular, but you do have to take in mind that during his watch as Batman, Riddler was able to break into the Batcave, destroy the Batmobile, destroy the entirety of the cave, all while knocking Alfred completely unconscious and completely getting away with it, kidnapping Robin also in the process. So I feel like Kilmer is probably one of the slightly weaker picks in this regard. His intelligence definitely does strike in his favor, and I do like his performance as Bruce Wayne for the most part, especially with, like I said, how he's able to portray his intelligence. But he's definitely a weaker Batman in almost every other regard, especially when you get to the Batman suit as well, which as we start to get into Schumacher's era, things with a Batsuit start to get iffy. So next we move on to George Clooney of Batman and Robin. Now George Clooney tries his best in this... Clooney tries his best... I'm sorry, just the idea of trying to make a compelling argument about how George Clooney and Joel Schumacher's notoriously infamous Batman and Robin is kind of something hard to make a straight face with. But we're going to try our best. Whew. Now, George Clooney's portrayal as Batman, to be fair, is actually pretty good. He's being given a horrible, horrible script, but he does actually bear the closest physical resemblance to the actual character of Bruce Wayne than almost any other live-action actor who's played him, and it's definitely a point in his favor. However, he fails in almost every single other point. The Batman suits in particular, there's no way he's going to be able to look intimidating in these whatsoever with the bat nipples and the bat butts and just... ugh. Everything goes neon, everything goes crazy, everything goes weirdly silver. It's bat skates, it's all this absolute craziness, which is technically fine in its own regard, but it fits nowhere in the movie itself. But actually why he fits badly as Batman, definitely strikes in a lot of regards. There's not that much he physically does overall in this movie. I mean, not only is he given supreme amounts of help, and debatably in his favor, he is facing one of the very few metahuman versions of characters actually ever given in live action. So he does have tough villains in theory that he's fighting, but, instead of getting this Mr. Freeze, we ended up getting this Mr. Freeze. But I mean, you can't say the guy's not prepared for anything. I mean, gadget-wise, he's got the Bat credit card.
A bad credit card, I'm telling you!
Okay, you want to move on as much as I do? Let's move on. Now we finally reach Christian Bale in the Dark Knight trilogy by Christopher Nolan. Now for many people, this is probably going to be your ringer. This is probably going to be the one you're automatically going to assume is going to win. But let's look at the tale of tape as what we actually have in front of this character. Definitely in fighting prowess and in true physicality, there is almost no questioning that this character is on top. Christian Bale is shown out of suit, is one of the very few Batmans that didn't need to wear muscular armor on his suit to make him look like he was ripped. He actually did get ripped for this role. And the fight scenes in these movies, for the most part, when the camera's not going absolutely out of control, is very frantic and crazy. That being said, he's not actually given that much to actually fight against in these movies. Throughout the three films, Bane is the only character in which he's actually given a direct physical, mano-a-mano challenge. as the character, of which he completely loses. And even when he gets it back, it's just by pure strength and will he's able to defeat him. Defeat him. Ugh. One of the major points against him, however, is the fact that they make it very clear in this movie that he only serves under one master. He only trains in one specific martial art, compared to someone like Keaton's version, who is implied to be trained in many, and with Schumacher's versions, which, to be fair, we're given no absolute information about which ones they're supposed to be involved in. Despite the fact that Schumacher likes to imply that his films are canon with Burton's, which is really complicated with the fact that, Harvey Dent does a race swap between films. We're not getting into that. But of all the points we can put against Christian Bale, unfortunately the biggest one has to be the Batman voice. Now hear me out. I know there are plenty of you out there that like to defend this voice to the death, and could really get intimidated every time you hear Batman going, "Where are the other drugs going?" However, not only did Michael Keaton do it subtly, not perfectly, but he did do it in the original Batman 1989 movie, but Kevin Conroy has been doing the dual multiple Batman voice for years, almost flawlessly. Now, we're not talking about Kevin Conroy's Batman today, because, let's be honest, if he was competing, he would win. But for the time being, I just wanted to mention that so we can see that Bale does not get a free pass on his voice just because, he was the only one to do the voice, when it's clearly not the case. So I guess that's everybody. It's kind of hard to make a pick between them. I don't know if I could pick anybody who I would say necessarily is the best Batman. I guess they kind of all have their ups and downs here and there. It's strange. I kind of feel like I'm forgetting about somebody. There's just another version of Batman that's often overlooked by fans, and despite that is one of the most iconic versions of the character and responsible for almost the entire existence of Batman in the course of modern media. Just kind of having a resurgence of popularity lately. But who could it be? Who could it be? Okay, I know what you're thinking. Ken, you can't be serious. There is no way you're about to sit in front of us right now as a self-proclaimed Batman expert and make us the legitimate argument that Adam West's 1966 Batman William Dozier TV show Batman is in fact the greatest Batman of all time. You're not making that argument, right? 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 Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, brace yourselves. I know. I can hear you, all you ridiculously overhyped fanboys right now. But he's so goofy. He's so stupid looking. He's not the slightest bit intelligent. And you know what? You're right. And I'll be completely honest on the actual fear factor of whether or not this particular version of Batman is shown striking fear into audiences and villains all around. He does lose some serious points, but he makes up some major points in other categories. No kill rule, right off the bat, he has it. His vigilantism, I didn't get a chance to talk about it as much before, but look at all of the other Batmans we've had before us, and how all of them at different points only have just the slightest bearings of relationships with the police, with Commissioner Gordon, in an extremely positive light. But on top of that, not only does this particular version of Batman have incredibly good ties with Commissioner Gordon, but Batman and Robin in this particular version actually act as deputized members of the Gotham Police Department. You do not get any more directly heroic than that. And while fighting prowess might be something you would immediately chalk up to being a major negative against this character, but despite the fact that they use more stage-styled choreography in this show, there's no denying that throughout the show we're shown Batman actually fighting as much as 3, 4, even 5 different villains all at the same time. And at one point even holds his own in combat, fighting alongside Green Hornet and Kato. That's right, this version of Batman fought side by side with Bruce Lee and held his own. He also must hold up very well in the stealth department if absolutely nobody has figured out his secret identity in any of these movies. Because every single other Batman that I've listed so far has either openly blurted their secret identity out to another character, or has had another major character in their show figure out their secret identity. And this is the only cinematic Batman so far that has not let his secret identity be discovered by any other character. And we can argue all day about how somehow this being the bam, boom, pow, whap, crazy, out-of-control Batman somehow makes him inferior to the other versions as far as his trueness to Batman, because, everyone knows that's not the real Batman. The real comic book, dark and gritty Batman. The Batman that fought dinosaurs with a bow and arrow, or, taught children how to read after Joker tried to become the ambassador to Canada, or helped Superman when a magical piece of kryptonite turned Superman gay. I'm not kidding, that's a thing. No, this is the only version of Batman. This is the true dark Batman. But any way you slice it, when it comes to either the protection of secret identity, the true morals of being Batman, the versatility of his gear, his ability to fight multiple opponents at once, unlike any other character, and his relations with the Gotham PD, and the reasons go on, give you definitive evidence that Adam West is the greatest live-action Batman of all time. If you need one more reason, here's one more. Because Batman.
Yes, this is real music. Darkness. No parents.
I want to thank all of you guys who checked out our series. I'm really hoping this is going to be an ongoing show for us at Dead Men Inc. Productions, and I'm really excited to see where this series can take us. That being said, I want you guys to choose what our next episode of Because Batman is going to be about. So go ahead and click here for option A, click here for option B. Whoever gets the most votes is going to be our third episode of Because Batman. Go ahead and check out my new book, The Man Who Watched Batman Volume 1, in the description below. And go ahead and click around the screen for some various other projects done by me and my other buddies here at Dead Men Inc. Productions. Until next time, feel free to like, favorite, and subscribe, and I will see you next time on Because Batman.